You're not broke because you spend too much, and you're not struggling simply because you don't work hard enough. You're struggling because the system, well, it was never actually designed for you to win. It was designed for you to participate. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what is arguably the deepest, most universally misunderstood financial architecture in the United States. We're going to look at the hidden mechanics of wealth, the invisible tripwires of government policy, and the stark mathematical reality of a retirement system that is right now slowly bleeding out. Think about it. Millions of Americans wake up every single day, they clock in, and they blindly surrender a significant chunk of every paycheck to a mechanism they fundamentally do not understand. They trust, we all trust, that a safety net is being built for us. But the reality of how this money is actually calculated, who it truly benefits, and how the wealthy literally, legally step right out of the line of fire, that's a story that is rarely told.
So let me ask you a question. What if I told you that a high-income earner could work for just 15 years, max out their contributions, and then earn exactly $0 for the next 20 years, yet still walk away with a massive, highly respectable payout at retirement? I mean, it sounds impossible, right? It sounds like an absolute glitch in the matrix. We are all raised to believe that you grind for 40 or 45 years, you steadily pay your dues, and then finally you earn your rest. But as folks in the financial independence and early retirement communities already know, it is not a glitch at all. It is the exact mathematical reality of the system we are all funding. A normal person works their entire life to secure a payout, while someone else can sprint for a decade and a half, step away entirely, and let the system mathematically reward their absence. To understand this psychological shock, we really have to look under the hood. But before we expose exactly how this mechanism works and who is quietly using it to their ultimate advantage, I need you to do something for me. Your support is literally what allows us to keep exposing these financial truths. So please subscribe to the channel USA Rift, like this explainer, and comment down below on what you think about this system as we break it all down. Deep dive, independent research exactly like this relies entirely on viewer support. So if you want to help us continue pulling back the curtain, support the channel by becoming a channel member today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Most people view Social Security like a giant savings account. You put money in a vault with your name etched on the front, and eventually you take it out. That is a complete illusion. Social Security is a cold, hard, highly progressive formula. The government takes your earnings and they index them for inflation to determine what is called your AIME, or your average indexed monthly earnings. This right here is the foundation of the illusion. It's not about what you saved. It's about how this specific calculation interprets your lifetime of labor. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you earned $50,000 back in 1995. The government doesn't just look at that raw number. They run it through an indexing multiplier to translate that past labor into today's wage levels. They are constantly mathematically adjusting the value of your past sweat to fit their current payout models.
In that grand calculation, it relies on one very specific number, 35. The system strictly tallies your highest 35 earning years. Let's contrast two situations to really make this hit home. Meet worker A. They work a grinding retail job for 45 years. Because the formula only looks at 35 years, their lowest 10 earning years are completely tossed out, just gone. Now meet worker B. They work in a high-paying tech industry for just 15 years, make an absolute fortune, and retire at age 40. The system looks for 35 years of data, it only finds 15, and it simply fills the remaining 20 years with zeros. 20 years of zeros. And here's the profound disparity that absolutely shocks the American worker. Because of the way the progressive math is structured, those 20 years of zeros do not destroy worker B's payout. They still get paid, and they get paid remarkably well.
Section 1. The secret of bend points. You see, the system uses a framework that almost no one in the middle class even knows exists. It's called bend points. These are the hidden thresholds that dictate exactly who wins and who loses. The formula is split into 3 distinct buckets, and the return on your investment drops violently as you move from one bucket to the next. This is the drastic ROI cliff of the American retirement system. For the first roughly $1,174 of your indexed monthly earnings, the government gives you back 90%. 90%! That's huge. But once you cross that first bend point, that return suddenly plummets to 32%. And if you continue to earn more and cross the second bend point at around $7,078, your return on those additional hard-earned tax dollars crashes down to a mere 15%. You are paying the exact same tax rate out of your paycheck every single week, but the system is quietly choking off your payout. And this isn't just some fringe theory. We see this discussed openly among wealth managers and financial planners behind closed doors all the time.
As one insider bluntly put it, once you exceed the second bend point, the additional dollars are minimal. This exposes a massive psychological trap. Traditional financial advice tells everyone to just keep earning, keep grinding, keep throwing money into the system. But that advice completely blinds the middle and upper middle class to the fact that they are essentially throwing their money into a black hole. The system is heavily weighted to provide a safety net at the bottom, which means continuing to max out your W-2 contributions at the top is frankly a fool's errand. You're feeding a machine that has mathematically stopped feeding you back. The consequences of this structure are absolutely profound. If you are a lower income earner filling up that first 90% bucket, you are effectively getting a massive 5% real return on your Social Security taxes. But if you are a high-income earner relentlessly maxing out the system year after year after year, you are heavily penalized, often walking away with less than a 1% real return. So you might be wondering, why does the government do this? Because it is progressive redistribution disguised as a personal retirement account. The philosophy behind the math is to take from the high-earning years of the professional class and subsidize the baseline survival of the working class. It is a wealth transfer mechanism elegantly wrapped in the comforting language of an insurance policy. Section 2. How high earners game it.
But here's the thing. The wealthy do not just sit back and accept a 1% return. They never do. They understand these bend points, and they restructure their entire financial lives to legally exploit this exact math. And they do it using corporate tax structures, specifically the S corporation. If you form an S corp, you are allowed to split your income. Part of it is classified as a W-2 salary, which is subject to the brutal 15.3% FICA payroll tax. That's 12.4% for Social Security and 2.9% for Medicare. Normally, an employer pays half of that, but self-employed individuals bear the entire weight of that 15.3%. The rest of your business profits, however, those are taken as distributions, which are completely immune to that payroll tax. So the golden rule, whispered by CPAs across the country, is incredibly simple. Try to keep your salary as low as reasonably possible. But what exactly is reasonable? For 2025, financial planners have calculated a very specific sweet spot. A target salary of $88,692. This is not a random guess. This is a mathematically weaponized target that CPAs actively calibrate every single year based on inflation. Why this exact number? Because it perfectly hits that second bend point we just talked about. It captures the highly profitable 90% return bucket, it captures the moderate 32% return bucket, and then it just stops. It halts right at the cliff's edge. It essentially prevents the earner from ever stepping foot into that 15% abyss. So this is the classified playbook high earners use to insulate their wealth. Keep the W-2 salary strictly managed, hit that second bend point to guarantee a highly respectable Social Security payout, take hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions in excess profits as distributions, and completely avoid throwing money into the 15% ROI cliff. Think about the compounding effect of this strategy for a second. Instead of losing 15.3% of their excess income to a system that will yield them less than a 1% return, they take those tax savings and pump them right into the S&P 500 or into real estate, where the capital actually compounds. They let the traditional W-2 worker fund the top tier of the system while they literally float entirely above it.
Section 3. The claiming multiplier.
But manipulating the input is only half the battle. To truly win the game, the wealthy also manipulate the output. And they do this through the ultimate luxury, the luxury of time, something the working class rarely has. J.P. Morgan Chase recently published data outlining this exact scenario. If an individual earning $60,000 retires at 62, they receive a heavily reduced benefit. Now, think about the brutal reality of a blue-collar worker. If your body is physically broken at 62 from decades of grueling manual labor, you really have no choice. You absolutely must take the penalty and claim the money. But if you are a white-collar executive with the wealth to float your lifestyle, you can easily delay claiming until age 70. By doing so, the government guarantees a massive 24% permanent boost to your monthly check. That is an artificially inflated 8% annual government-backed return simply for waiting. Because the wealthy can afford the luxury of time, the system mathematically rewards them with the absolute highest possible lifetime payouts.
Section 4. The 2034 fiscal cliff.
All of this gaming, all of these diminishing returns, and massive demographic shifts are leading us toward a terrifying structural consequence. We are looking at a system that is bleeding out. The timeline is undeniable.
The last major reform to this program was way back in 1983. For decades, the system ran a massive surplus. But in 2021, a critical, devastating threshold was finally crossed. The cost of benefits exceeded the revenue generated by payroll taxes. To cover that shortfall, the government has been actively draining the Social Security Trust Fund. And when we say draining the trust fund, we mean cashing in these special issue treasury bonds that act as the system's life support. Based on current actuarial data, that fund will be completely depleted by the year 2034. In macroeconomics, less than a decade is essentially tomorrow. It is a terrifyingly short runway for a program that millions of people literally depend on for basic survival. So what happens if Washington does nothing? If the year 2034 arrives and that trust fund hits zero, the law requires an automatic, brutal adjustment. Because incoming payroll taxes will only cover about 80% of the owed benefits, every single retiree in the United States will face an immediate, automatic 20% reduction in their monthly payments. Let's make that real for a second. If your mother is relying on a $2,000 monthly check just to pay for groceries, her medication, and her property taxes, that automatically drops to $1,600 overnight by law, a sudden, permanent slash to the lifeline of millions of vulnerable citizens. Section 5. Who pays for the fix? This brings us to the ultimate question of power and consequence. The deficit is way too large for accounting tricks now. Real pain must be distributed. Analysts at the University of Wisconsin and the Social Security Administration have mapped out the proposed legislative reforms, and every single one comes with massive domino effects. First, raising the full retirement age to 68 or 69. Sure, this fixes the math, but it places a heavy physical penalty on blue-collar workers who literally can't do manual labor into their late 60s. Second, eliminating the payroll tax cap entirely. This forces the wealthy to pay more, but economists warn it would cause massive labor market disruptions as corporations simply stop paying high W-2 salaries and shift executives to contractor models just to avoid the tax. Third, tying benefits to regular inflation rather than wage growth. This is a subtle hidden cut that mathematically compounds poverty over time. By the time a retiree hits 85, their purchasing power would be completely eroded. And fourth, aggressively reducing the bend point payouts for higher earners. As researchers point out, the dilemma is that while any reform is better than inaction, each comes with immediate costs. Washington is currently trapped in a zero-sum game. There is absolutely no painless way out of this trap. Every single legislative solution requires stripping wealth, time, or security away from the American public. Any fix is guaranteed to alienate a massive voting bloc, which is exactly why politicians refuse to touch it until the absolute last second. The system is cornered, and the math, unfortunately, does not care about optics. We are barreling toward a mathematical cliff. It is a crisis funded by a middle class that still firmly believes they are putting money into a personal, guaranteed vault. Meanwhile, the ultra-wealthy use sophisticated corporate structures, target salaries, and bend points to completely step out of the line of fire. It is a tale of two Americas, one that feeds the machine blindly and one that floats above it, utilizing the code to build compounding wealth. The illusion of security is without a doubt the most powerful tool the system has, and the worst part, most people will never realize it.